Hello. In some parish churches you might find poignant memorials that are known variously as Maidens Crants, Maidens Garlands and sometimes Virgins Crowns. And that krantz word derives from German for a wreath or a garland, and in this case a wreath of flowers known as a chaplet worn on the head. In most parts of England these garlands were made specifically for young women, maidens, often betrothed but who had died before their wedding took place. Exceptionally, at Abbotts Ann near Andover in Hampshire, they also commemorate men who died tragically early. There are around 50 krants in Abbotts Ann Church of St Mary, where the tradition continued until recent times. There is a reference in Hamlet, and it comes after Ophelia's suicide. It's Act 5, Scene 1. So we have evidence of a tradition being a familiar part of a funeral ceremony for a young girl back in around 1600. At the time, suicides would normally be buried in unconsecrated ground and without ceremony. But in Hamlet, by royal command, the rules are bent. And the priest says this: "She should in ground unsanctified have lodged till the last trumpet. For charitable prayers, shards, flints and pebbles should be thrown on her. Yet here she is allowed her virgin krants, her maiden struments, and the bringing home of bell and burial." The Maid's Tragedy, which is a play by Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher, when that was first printed in 1619, it contained a woodcut print of the custom, and a broadsheet of 1620 mentions "A garland fresh and fair of lilies there was made, in sign of her virginity, and on her coffin laid." So we have references to this tradition back to the early 17th century. The tradition may of course be much older. It might have been driven underground at the Reformation. It would be suppressed by the Puritans, and if the practice was widespread, then perhaps it became localised, just quietly continued in some areas and then revived much more openly later. The earliest surviving garland we have dates to 1680. It's on display in what are known as the priest's rooms at St Mary's Church, Beverley, which are not normally open more than once or twice a year. Considering the fragility, it's a wonder that any of these have survived. And they've evolved from simple circlets into bell-shaped wooden frames decorated with paper flowers, and often with a glove or a handkerchief suspended inside. It might contain a name and a date, and sometimes a few lines of verse. And they were carried either on or before the coffin. Sometimes the garland was placed in the grave, but more usually it was hung in a prominent position inside the church. There's a strong survival of the tradition in the Peak District, and at Holy Trinity Church, Ashford-in-the-Water, there are 4 faded examples, the oldest of which dates to 1747, and they're all now conserved within perspex covers. The parish register for St Peter's Church in Hope for 1749 to 1750 records the churchwardens being paid 1 6 to clear away all the garlands from the beams to allow in more daylight. There must have been a lot. And there are further records at Eyam, Tideswell, Hathersage and Darley Dale. Records of the practice in the Peak District continue well into the 19th century. And a Maidens Crants hanging in St Lawrence's Church, Eyam, in 1792 inspired the poet Anna Seward, known as the Swan of Lichfield, to write these lines: "The gloves suspended by the garland's side, white as snowy flowers with ribbon tied, dear village, Long these wreaths funereals spread, simple memorials of the early dead. This krantz is on display in a glass case at St Giles Church in Matlock. This one is in All Saints Church at Trusley, and these examples are in the Church of the Holy Cross at Eyam. The tradition was revived in 1995 at Ashford-in-the-Water, when a maiden's garland was made to honour local resident Miss Joy Price. She was a Franciscan tertiary, a third order Franciscan. They don't wear a habit, they don't take vows, but they do live by simple core values. And Miss Price was a Sunday school teacher in the village, and she left her house to the church. Now next time I'm going to continue with a look at some of the earliest memorials, but of a more conventional kind. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.